Thank you for your patience. All right, welcome today to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for the Santa Clara Valley Water Board District number 7. And today's program is being brought to you by the Los Altos Library, the Leagues of Women Voter of Los Altos Mountain View area, and the Palo Alto area. Just some background, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you are not yet a member, please consider joining. The member forms are over there. Your membership and dues will support the work that we do. So feel free to pick up a form, or you can go online. Another important thing I want to mention to you, Smart Voter. This is our public place where we encourage candidates to post their information. So it's all there in one spot, so it's one-stop shopping. And it's smartvoter.org. And you can see what questions the League has asked the candidates. They answer these questions, and that gives you a chance to compare and contrast. So the candidates are all answering the same question. You can see how they differ. Over the next few days, the League will be sponsoring meetings to present pros and cons of the state ballot measures. On October 18th, we will also present a candidates forum for the Los Altos City Council candidates. I would like to encourage you to attend this forum, as it gives you the best opportunity to get to know the candidates and to understand the issues. The date and the location of the forum is on your website, or you may check with me after today's forum. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, the other thing, on Sunday, October 17th at 11:30 a.m., Foothills Congregational Church, 461 Orange Avenue, that's right across the street. We'll be having pros and cons. This is a public presentation. We'll go over all of the 9 ballot measures. We'll also go over the Santa Clara Valley measures, explain them, and give you information about what the proponents are saying and what the opponents are saying. So that date is also on our website. We have KMVT, Channel 15 taping today's forum, and we invite you to check with their broadcasting schedule for the time and date. All right, I would like to introduce now Jan Pepper. She's a member of the League of Women Voters. She heads up our natural resources portfolio, and she will be your moderator for the evening. You have these cards here. I will be sitting over here. I will go through the cards and make sure that they're legible and that they're not duplicated, and I will pass them on to Jan for after their introductory statements to ask the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Good afternoon. My name is Jan Pepper, and I'm with the League of Women Voters. Welcome to this candidates forum for the Director, District 7 of the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Today's forum is sponsored by the Los Altos Mountain View League of Women Voters, the Cupertino Sunnyvale League of Women Voters, the American Association of University Women, the Los Altos Library, and KMVT 15 Community Television. Now for the
and Palo Alto.
Oh, okay. And Palo Alto League of Women Voters, thank you. Now for the candidates forum. There are 2 candidates vying for 1 open seat. The 2 candidates are Lou Becker and Brian Schmidt. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the format of today's session. These are the ground rules that we will be observing during the forum. For the audience, the questions to the candidates must be written on cards provided by the League at the forum, which will be provided by our volunteers. And there will be no audience demonstration, clapping, or other noise during the forum. For the candidates, there will be no substitutes or stand-ins for the candidates. Candidate responses should pertain to the question at hand. The moderator may interrupt a candidate if she believes the candidate is straying from the subject. I will enforce the firm time limits. The time signals consist of yellow and red cards, which our timekeepers have in the front here. The yellow card is to indicate 30 seconds remaining. The red card indicates that the candidate should stop speaking. Candidates, our timekeepers, are located right in front of you. And lastly, candidates should not interrupt each other. We will be taking written questions throughout the forum. This allows us to get all of your questions to cover as wide a range of issues as possible. Our volunteer, Gabriella, will be providing you with cards and pencils and collect your questions. We will begin with a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, and the candidates have drawn numbers for the order of speaking. We will then have the questions we have collected from the audience, and candidates will be called on in varying order for each question, and will have up to 2 minutes each to respond. We will then have a closing statement from each candidate of up to 2 minutes. Candidates will speak in the reverse order of the opening statements. And one final note, in the interest of time, and so that we can keep this a nonpartisan environment, we ask that there be no applause or other demonstrations of support or opposition to the candidates or their positions. And at the end of the forum, we will thank them with our applause. So let us begin with Mr. Becker, followed by Mr. Schmidt for your 2-minute opening statements.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. I want to thank the League for having this event. It's very nice of you to take a Saturday afternoon to look into the issues of the Water Commission. I'm running because I believe that the current board at our water district lacks the process and organizational integrity that it needs. They tend to act as individual sponsors of their pet projects rather than working as a board that tries to put together a consensus and then set that into policy. And this destroys part of the productivity of the board. Things that they also are failing to do is, I believe, they're failing to provide long-range planning. For example, one of the most important plans you could have is define the demand that we're going to have for water for the next 25 years. And do we have a plan to meet those demands? I cannot find a credible plan that addresses that. But that's fundamental to the work that they should be doing. They also are guilty of charter creep. They tend to branch outside of what their real core responsibilities are and get involved in work that really is the work of other agencies. For example, they venture into recreation, into commercial development, and into emergency operations and so on. These are not really the core responsibilities that they should concentrate on. And if elected, I plan to bring about change to these deviations. I'd like to talk a bit about my background. My background is that I'm a civil engineer. I worked for 40 years as an engineering manager and an engineer. And I had 12 years of experience on the Los Angeles City Council, 10 years on the Valley Water Commission, which is an advisory body to the board. So I have lots of experience, and I understand what they do and what they ought to do. And I can bring these resources to that position if I'm elected. Thank you very much.
Shall I start? Thank you. Good afternoon, Brian Schmidt, and I do want to thank the League for having us here and for everybody coming out on the nicest Saturday so far to come to this. I also heard that they're closing at about 3:45, so we won't be keeping you all afternoon here. But what I wanted to say was my thinking on why I was endorsed on Wednesday by the Mercury News and why I've been endorsed by the majority of the Board of Supervisors, including Supervisor Niss, by the majority of the council members in Mountain View and Los Altos Hills, and 8 of the 9 city council members in Palo Alto. Especially considering that oftentimes I've disagreed with people in those various places. They think that they can work with me. Because I think actually Lou and I share some of our concerns about the water district. My concern, even though I come at it as an environmentalist, I've increasingly focused on the problems of governance and how the governance has been basically fossilized with people that haven't had true democracy at the upper level. Same people being there too long, no change, little change, little turnover. And I'd like to see some real change to make a difference there. For one thing, to have evening meetings so people with day jobs can actually attend instead of their Tuesday morning meetings that they currently do. I'd like to remove artificial restrictions on citizen oversight committees, including, for example, the Environmental Advisory Committee that I had chaired. And I'd like to see some real reasonable term limits with the retroactivity. Once you do all that, then you can really focus on the core issues. One of the water quality or the quality of our watersheds, an issue I'd like to deal with is with mercury. We have one of the most mercury contaminated counties in the state, and we can come up with a polluter pays mechanism operating at the state level to address that. I'd like to do more on making the environment come to the forefront on protecting our stream areas from flooding. So thank you very much.
Now it's time for the candidates to answer your questions. And the first question that we have is, are the candidates familiar with the grand jury reports commenting on the governance practices of the water district? What is your opinion about the reports and the water district governance practices? And we'll have Mr. Schmidt go first.
There have been a number of reports over the years. The one I focused on most closely is the last one. It pointed out problems that I actually share regarding Alviso. There was also a claim regarding conflict of interest regarding one of the directors. I'm not sure if it was actually proven in that case, but I think it's very important to avoid even appearance of conflict of interest. So the way I've approached that is I've been very clear about this idea of trying to develop a port in Alviso, that I have a lot of concerns about the economic and environmental impacts of doing massive amounts of dredging up in that area, and that the water district should be very careful to the extent it gets involved with that and watch environmental interests very closely. On the question of the educational center off of Gold Street, I've said that I've gone to the board, water district board, and said that decision to spend $1.3 million in that area, which was criticized in this last grand jury, needs to be reconsidered. And finally, I submitted a letter to the board of directors when they're increasing their pay. At the same time I said they should, instead of increase their pay, they should decrease it. I also said that if a director is appearing at community meetings on an issue where the director has a conflict of interest, then the director should not get compensation for those community meetings, which is what issue that was raised in the last grand jury report and that I think needs to be addressed. So there's a lot of other reports out there, I think, that have to deal with the lack of accountability and democracy with the water district board, and I've suggested, I think, could help have more turnover at the board and have a better sense of public involvement. Thank you.
Yes, I have looked at a number of those reports. I don't know if I've read all of them because they've been over a number of years. But I think one of the most flagrant problems they brought up was the lack of cost control. They used an example of the test facility that they built for testing the quality of the water. And they started out with a budget of $8 million, which should build a pretty nice test facility. When they got through with it, it was $21 million, according to the grand jury. And I assume they did the research to get the numbers straight. So this kind of conduct is really not acceptable, in my opinion. The grand jury tends to put them on their schedule and go visit them quite often because they are aware of the general way that they conduct themselves, and it's unacceptable. For those of us in the county, I think it should be embarrassing, and we should change this. We'll change that situation. I think this election will change it, and we can look forward to a brighter future. I think the conduct in Alviso was particularly concerning to me because it did branch out and get into things that they should not really be participating in. For example, the work in Alviso Slough, they're planning, well, they were planning on spending $22 million. Now I think they've got it back to $6 million. But it still is for recreational boating, and it's nothing to do with their basic responsibility. The voters voted to spend money on clean waterways and so on, but not to do recreation work. So I think those reports that the grand jury have, the ones they've submitted, have been very useful for us to have some visibility for what goes on.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll have Mr. Becker answer this one first. What ideas will you bring to the water board that are new and innovative?
Okay, I'll try to answer that. Water is sort of an old technology, and we've all been fighting the problems of water for a long time. But some of the things I'm really interested in and things that I would bring to the forefront, I think, is I want to give a lot of emphasis to recycled water. Now, the board has taken a significant step forward, and they're participating in a program where they're building an advanced treatment facility. And this is a big deal because the current process does deliver water that's what we call recycled water. And it does go through a tertiary process of purification, but it isn't really high quality water. This advanced system will take it through a reverse osmosis, there's some special filtering, and then there's some disinfecting that goes on, and then the water that comes out of there will be very high quality. And we have to get that and then take a look at that water and then see where all we can use it, because there's going to be a lot of potential uses for it. And this recycled water is one of the greatest sources of water supply that we have to address growth, because we can use that to supplement the other water that we're bringing into the valley. So that's a big item. I think I would like to bring to the party a plan to have a very steady program of working on our waterways and creeks. If you look at the report on our waterways throughout the county, there's 800 miles of them. There are many of them that are polluted in one way or another. Some have mercury, some have other toxics, and others have just a lot of trash in them. I would like to bring the concept where we actually have a steady program. Every year we make significant progress on some waterway throughout the county. And if we do this in a steady way, we can make some real progress.
I agree with Lou on recycled water and the importance of that. The district is doing quite a bit on that. But you're probably not here to hear us agree with each other on these things. So everything Lou said on recycled water is completely correct. I would add a number of new ideas. The one idea that I've mentioned a number of times is putting the district assets online. So you could go to Google Earth and move down and see where the district's assets are located. You can see where their conservation easements are located and whether the district is doing a good job of protecting the easements that it owns in the areas near the streams, which is what it's supposed to be doing. There's some ideas that have been promoted for a while back, including having a guide to public participation in the environment in any of the advisory committees. Actually, we tried to get the water district to allow such a guide created, and they rejected giving the advisory committees authority to create such a guide. If I were on the district board, that would be different. And I would also bring other ideas I brought up in the past, including increased focus on the cumulative impact of impervious surfaces. That's something that when you have more paving, you have more flooding, and that's something that creates a problem for the district and for the ratepayers and taxpayers. I wrote a legal white paper on this issue several years ago based on a grant that my organization that I work for had received from the district. And that idea is something else that I think could help. So I want to say that there are some issues like desalination that are extremely controversial. Desalination involves a lot of energy usage and creation of brine. So just because it's a new idea doesn't make it a good idea. But there are some really good ideas, I think, that are innovative and can be done to make a difference and change. Thank you.
Thank you. For this next question, we will have Mr. Schmidt answer it first. It seemed to come as some surprise locally that the water district was going to install flood basins at Cuesta Park and Block School. Can you comment on the necessity for those flood basins and the process that was used to inform the public?
Yeah, there's a lot of concern out there, and I've heard it. Some people have come and asked me what I thought about that issue. It might come as a surprise to some folks, but it has been in process for several years now that they've been doing the environmental review of that project. And that project was specifically mentioned in the Clean Safe Creeks measure, as that there would be a project along Permanente Creek. So the general concept, I think, is fine. There are FEMA maps showing that there's flooding that can occur on Permanente Creek, confirmed by the district. I think that the project is worthwhile to move forward. I'm not sure if that is the first place I would put $40 million, but it's still something that the district made a promise to the public, and I think it should go forward. A lot of the specifics on that issue could be up to greater flexibility and could be done in accordance with working with the local government agencies. Like, they do need detention basins in the 4 places that they've placed it in order to eliminate the flooding problem. Cuesta Park, McKelvey, Block School, and Rancho San Antonio. But for McKelvey Park and for Block School, whether or not they put artificial turf is something that was really up to the local agencies, not to the water district, in my opinion. That's something where you can get flexibility and let the public try and work out what they want to see occur there. At Cuesta Park, whether or not there's going to be a history museum there, that's something else that I don't think is really the water district's business. So while the overall project is a good idea, I think it should move forward. A lot of the details could still be changed in a way that can incorporate public input.
Well, when the public doesn't know about something that's happening that's this large, then you have to say there has been a lack of transparency. There's been a lack of communication. One thing that would have helped there if the district director representing that area had come to the city councils and talked to the cities about it, to make it very clear and make it an evening meeting so that people have an opportunity to watch it and become more familiar with what's planned. I don't think there has been an adequate trade study presented to the public that shows what options that they really had considered. There are other options, and they admit that there are other options, but they've really never been discussed. The public's never had a chance to take a look at these. And this is a mistake. When you do something like this, you need to be really open to the public. So these are the things, these are the possible ways we could address this problem. These are the things we could do. This is the best way to do it, and so on. And let the public be part of the buy-in as to the approach that you're taking. They haven't done that. They sort of did their work and they came out and they said, this is the way it's going to be. And that's not the way to sell a program to the public, because the public is pretty smart. They understand what's best for their community. And so you have to take a look at their perspective, not just what the district itself thinks is best. So I would like to see this subject brought back for review to the next board after the election, and make sure that we do get good representation from the public at that review.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Mr. Becker. Santa Clara Valley Water District is the only agency that has contracts with both the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. What policy and political leadership do you think the district should take in state water policy related to those water supply contracts?
Okay, well, that's true. We do get water from both of those sources. And one of the problems, of course, we face is that the district does sign up for a certain amount of water, and seldom do they get all the water they sign up for. So I think that they need to do a lot of work in marketing their need to both of these government groups. I think the question was, what do they do to talk to the state? They have to talk to both the federal and the state. They buy the water from Central Valley from the federal source, and the water from the Delta, which comes from the state. And they really need to communicate with these organizations. Now, I've always felt that the district has a little bit of a problem. They're in the middle. They buy water from these two sources, and then they sell it to retailers who then sell it to us. And I've always felt that they haven't done a very good job of being a team player within this supply chain. You really have a supply chain there. You've got the people who have the water, they sell it here, and we sell it there, and then they finally sell it to us. And you have to be a team player in that, and develop a working a good working relationship with all of these sources, the people you sell to and the people you buy from. And I think the district has fallen down there. I would work to try and create better relationships between ourselves and the supplier and the customer.
I think the question said that the district is the only agency that buys from both the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. I assume they mean in Santa Clara County. I question whether that's true statewide. Oh, it is true. I am now corrected by the Water District Director. Thanks. I think the issue then is that the district is a relatively big player, and there's a lot of other water consumers that get the water. That there's a lot of water that comes from those two areas, and much of it is going down to Southern California. Our ability to change things is only one part of that overall issue. The district has to deal with the fact that it has limited control over the water supplies, and it can't force the delivery of the water that comes from those places. It does have a good project that it does with the Westlands Irrigation District, where, or Westlands Water District, where the Westlands get water that the district has rights to in normal years, and then that gives the district right to get some of that water in dry years. So that relationship should be continued. And then the district has to deal with its own customers through the water retailers. Right now it's in the middle of a lawsuit with one of the customers, and that could change the financing for the district if it ends up losing that lawsuit. But that's something that's just going to have to be resolved. It's a big issue. Hopefully the district will win on appeal and maintain the existing relationship.
Next question, Mr. Schmidt, you'll answer first. Can you please list the basic responsibilities of the Santa Clara Valley Water District?
The Water District has what they call 3 pillars. They do water supply for most of the county, although not all the county. Much of the area here in North County gets water from the Hatch Hatchie system. They do flood control for all of the county, although they also work in conjunction with local agencies. And then they do watershed restoration with a particular emphasis in area near streams. So that's the overall mission of the Water District. And it is relatively unique in combining all those missions. Normally you have a flood control district or you have a water supply district, but combining them all together is something that allows the Water District to play a useful role. In my work as an environmental attorney, I've dealt with other water districts, or even before I became an attorney back when I was in law school, working for the Natural Resources Defense Council. We saw how destructive a lot of water districts were. And this district has made significant progress and is a leader compared to some of the other districts in the sense of not thinking that its flood control responsibilities mean putting concrete in streams and channelizing to rush the water down to the next jurisdiction as quickly as you can. And that the purpose of your water supply is to just get more and more water without thinking about conservation. They do understand the importance of conservation. Groundwater recharge actually both helps provide water supply and prevents flooding that had occurred in the past due to subsidence, an issue that still occurs. The newest issue is watershed restoration. And I think that issue is something that gets a lot of voter and community support. And it's something that the Water District could do more about. It's still relatively poorly funded compared to the other ones. Something I'd like to work on.
Well, Brian's correct. The basic responsibility is to see that we have an adequate supply of water, that they take care of the watershed area, the streams and the reservoirs, etc., and that they protect us from flooding. They have to have a flood protection program. I think they really are doing a pretty good job of addressing these 3 areas. My concern is that they are using resources and funds to venture outside of what they're supposed to. If they would concentrate on those areas, I'd be much happier because that's what they're really supposed to do. And I think that's where they need to put their emphasis. So I'm a big supporter of seeing that we bring about better direction to this board and focus it on what it's really supposed to do. And then I think we must remember that while it does these things, flood protection and so on, and while it manages the water throughout the county, it has a very major responsibility to see that it does everything in an environmental friendly way. They cannot overlook that. And I think Brian and I agree there that they have a strong responsibility to see that we leave these streams in better condition 5 years from now than they are today.
Mr. Beckley, you'll answer this next question first. What is your evaluation of the financial